I still remember the pen in my hand. It was heavier than it should have been. Cheap plastic, blue ink, nothing special, yet it felt like I was holding the final weight of 10 years of my life. The lawyer's office was too cold, too white, too quiet. Even the air sounded like it was judging me. Across the table, my husband, my ex-husband now, sat like a man waiting for a flight he knew he would catch. Calm, prepared, certain. Daniel always looked like that when he thought he had control. And that day, he thought he had everything. When people talk about divorce, they talk about screaming, crying, drama, broken plates. They never talk about the silence, the kind that sits between two people who once loved each other and now can't even look into each other's eyes. The silence that day was unbearable. The lawyer slid the papers toward me. "Just sign here," she said softly, like she was afraid I might shatter. I almost laughed. If only she knew. Daniel didn't look at me while I read. He already knew what was written there. The house, his. The car, his. The business, his. The savings, his. Even the art on the walls, his. I kept reading anyway, because that was the last time I would ever pretend I didn't understand what he was doing. 10 years of marriage had taught me one thing. Daniel never rushed unless he was hiding something. And that day, he was rushing. "Sarah, let's not make this harder than it has to be," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "We both want this over." I nodded. I always nodded back then. I picked up the pen. And I signed. The moment the ink touched the paper, something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Not angry. Quiet. And that scared me more than anything. People think I lost that day. They think I walked out of that office empty-handed. But what no one saw, not even Daniel, was that I had already won something much bigger. Time. 3 years earlier, I had started copying documents. Not because I suspected him. Not because I was planning revenge. Because I was lonely. I was the wife who sat in the corner of meetings. The wife who brought coffee. The wife who signed papers without explanation. So I started scanning everything just to feel involved. And I never deleted anything. After the divorce, I went back to the apartment. Not our apartment. His apartment now. I packed quietly. 1 suitcase. 2 dresses. My passport. My laptop. He watched me from the door, arms crossed, like a man supervising a clean exit. "You'll be okay," he said, not unkindly. "I'll help you if you need anything." I looked at him. The man who once kissed my forehead every morning now spoke to me like a charity case. "I won't need help," I said. And I meant it. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on the floor, back against the bed, and opened my laptop. For the first time, I looked at the files without fear. Without loyalty. Without love. And that's when I saw the pattern. Accounts in places I had never visited. Companies with names that meant nothing. Transfers that moved like ghosts. And my name. Everywhere. Daniel had been hiding behind me, using my clean record. My silence. My trust. I closed the laptop and laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was clear. 2 weeks later, I booked a flight. Overseas. One way. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone. Because disappearing is easy when no one is looking for you. At the airport, I stood in line with strangers who were going on holidays, business trips, honeymoons. I was going to war. Quietly. Legally. Slowly. When the plane lifted off, I finally let myself cry. Not for Daniel. For the woman I used to be. The one who thought love meant loyalty. The one who believed silence was peace. But by the time we crossed the ocean, I was done crying. I wiped my face, opened my laptop, and created a new folder. I named it Preparation. Because while Daniel thought he had taken everything from me, I had just taken the most dangerous thing of all, his future. When the plane landed, no one was waiting for me. No family. No friends. No memories. Just me, and the sound of wheels hitting a country that didn't know my name. And that was exactly what I needed. The airport smelled like coffee and rain. Signs in a language I barely understood surrounded me, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to relief. Here, I wasn't someone's wife. I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't a liability. I was invisible. I dragged my suitcase through customs, my heart beating faster with every step, like someone might still stop me and ask why I was running. But no one did. I stepped outside, and the air felt different, lighter, like it didn't care who I had been before. My apartment was small. White walls, wooden floors, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony that overlooked a street full of life. People laughed loudly here. They argued in cafes. They lived without whispering. I dropped my bag and sat on the floor, breathing in the silence. That night, I slept on the floor. And I slept like I hadn't slept in years. The next morning, I woke up early. Jet lag. Nerves. Freedom. I made coffee with a tea machine, burned my toast, and smiled at the mess. It was mine. Every mistake, every crumb, every quiet moment. I opened my laptop. Not to check emails. Not to call home. But to begin. I created new accounts. New passwords. New identities, not fake ones, but clean ones. I separated myself from the life Daniel had built on my name. And slowly, piece by piece, I took myself back. Days turned into weeks. I learned the streets by walking them. I learned the language by listening. I learned myself by being alone. At night, I studied international law, financial compliance, corporate fraud, things Daniel never thought I'd understand. And that was my advantage. One afternoon, as I sat in a cafe with my laptop open, my phone buzzed. Daniel. I didn't answer. He sent another message. Where are you? I smiled. I was everywhere he wasn't. That night, I opened the files again. This time with knowledge. I saw the structure, the crimes, the loopholes, and I realized something terrifying. If I did nothing, I would go down with him. So I made a decision. I would move first. I contacted a lawyer. Not in my home country. Not where Daniel had connections. But here. In a place where my name meant nothing and the law meant everything. She listened quietly as I spoke. Then she said something I will never forget. You're not his victim. You're his evidence. That night, I stood on my balcony, the city glowing below me. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was waiting. And somewhere across the ocean, Daniel was living his victory, unaware that his biggest mistake had already learned how to disappear. The hardest part of becoming invisible is learning what to do with the truth once you finally see it. For weeks, I avoided opening the files. Not because I was scared of what I would find, but because I was scared of what I would become once I understood them. But one night, the city went quiet. No traffic, no music, no voices. Just rain against the glass and the sound of my own breathing. And I knew it was time. I made tea. Strong. Bitter. The kind Daniel hated. I opened my laptop. And I opened the folder. At first, nothing made sense. Numbers that didn't connect. Names I didn't recognize. Transfers that moved like shadows from one account to another. But then patterns started forming. And when they did, my hands began to shake. Daniel hadn't just hidden money. He had built a maze. Shell companies in places I'd never visited. Accounts in my name I never opened. Loans signed with my signature I never remembered giving. And the worst part? It was all legal until you looked closely. That was the genius of it. And the cruelty. I spent days mapping everything. Sticky notes covered my walls. Lines drawn between companies like spiderwebs. Dates. Times. Amounts. And always my name. I felt sick. Not because of the crime, but because of the trust he had used to do it. I remembered the nights he came home late. The mornings he rushed me to sign papers. Just formal stuff, Sarah. Just for taxes. Don't worry about it. And I hadn't worried. Because I loved him. By the fourth night, I stopped crying. Crying wastes time. And I was done wasting it. I called my lawyer. She listened. Then she was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "If you disappear now, he wins. If you speak, the world will hear." I looked at the wall full of lies. and I chose to speak. But not yet. First, I needed protection. And leverage. I contacted a second lawyer. And a third. In different countries. Different time zones. Different systems. I learned how international law works and how slowly it moves. That was my weapon.
Time.
One morning, I received an email. A warning. From Daniel. We need to talk. Urgent. I stared at the screen and deleted it, because by then I already knew. He had noticed the cracks. And once a man like Daniel feels the ground move, he starts running. That night, I sent my first anonymous report. Not everything. Just enough. A single domino. I closed my laptop and leaned back, my heart pounding like I'd just jumped off a cliff. There was no going back now. And as the rain stopped, I whispered into the quiet room. You should have let me go. The world didn't change overnight. That's the thing about real consequences. They move slowly, like something waking up from a long sleep. After I sent the report, nothing happened. No calls. No emails. No warnings. Just silence. And silence is terrifying when you've just lit a fuse. I checked my phone too often. Every vibration made my stomach tighten. Every unknown number felt like it might be the end of everything. But days passed, then weeks, and still nothing happened. That's when I understood something important. The system was listening. It just wasn't speaking yet. I kept living my new life. I learned the city better. I found a small bakery where the owner smiled like she knew my secrets. I started running in the mornings, my breath burning, my legs heavy, reminding myself I was still real. But every night I worked. I documented everything. Dates. Times. Files. Connections. I became a witness. One evening, my lawyer called. Her voice was different. They've opened a preliminary review, she said. My hands went cold. That's good, she added. It means someone read your report and believed it. I sat down. It had begun. The first sign that Daniel felt it came 3 days later. A message. Sarah, please call me. No anger. No confidence. Just fear. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a second report. Bigger. Louder. That night, I dreamed of the past. Daniel standing in our kitchen, smiling, handing me papers. Just sign here. I woke up sweating. And for the first time since I left, I was glad I was alone. The next morning, I saw his name online. Not in headlines. In forums. In whispers. Questions. That's how it starts, not with fire, but with doubt. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Sarah? His voice cracked. Yes, I said calmly. Are you doing this? He asked. I smiled. I'm just telling the truth, I replied. And I hung up. That was my first strike. And he felt it. Daniel had always been the hunter. That's what I used to love about him, the way he moved through the world like it belonged to him. Meetings bent around his schedule. People waited when he spoke. Silence followed him like respect. But fear was something I had never seen on his face. Until that night. The call came at 2:17 a.m. I knew it was him before I answered. Sarah, he whispered. You have to stop this. Not please. Not I'm sorry. You have to. Even then, he thought he still had authority over me. I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly, staring at the ceiling of my apartment. Don't lie to me, he snapped, then his voice broke. They're asking questions. Accounts are frozen. I can't move money. I said nothing. Silence is a mirror. And he finally saw himself in it. You left, he continued, voice shaking now. You disappeared. And suddenly all this starts happening. You expect me not to connect the dots. I turned on the lamp, light filling the room. I didn't disappear, I said softly. You just stopped seeing me years ago. He inhaled sharply. Sarah, we can fix this. That sentence. It used to work on me. It didn't anymore. You already fixed it, I said. When you used my name. The line went quiet. I could almost hear his thoughts scrambling. You don't understand what you're doing, he finally said. If this goes public, you'll go down with me. I smiled. I already protected myself. That's when he begged. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a man who had lost the map to his own life. Please, he said. I'll give you whatever you want. I closed my eyes. 10 years ago, I would have believed him. Now I knew better. I already took what I wanted, I said. What? He asked. My freedom. And I hung up. That night, I slept deeply. For the first time since the divorce. The next morning, the news hit. Not headlines, but signals. Regulators in 2 countries had opened investigations. Banks started asking questions. Partners started disappearing. And Daniel, the man who once controlled everything, was suddenly running in circles. My lawyer called. You did well not responding, she said. He's panicking. That means he'll make mistakes. I leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. I'm ready, I said. For what? She asked. For the next move. That afternoon, I sent the 3rd report. The one that connected everything. The one that couldn't be ignored. And, as I pressed send, I finally understood. The hunter had become the hunted. And he had no idea how to survive that. Daniel stopped calling. That's how I knew things were getting bad. When a man like him goes silent, it's not because he's calm, it's because he's planning. And for the first time in years, I was one step ahead of his plan. He didn't know it yet, but he was already inside the trap. The message came through his lawyer. Not from him. From someone who still believed he had power. Mr. Daniel is willing to negotiate. I laughed out loud. Negotiate what? His freedom? His lies? His time? My lawyer read the message and shook her head. He's scared, she said. He thinks you want money. I closed my eyes. That's his problem, I replied. He still doesn't understand me. The meeting was set for a neutral city. A glass building. A conference room with no personality. A table too long for honesty. I walked in alone. He was already there. And, for the first time in our entire marriage, Daniel stood up when he saw me. He looked older. Not in years, in weight. The weight of fear sits differently on men like him. It bends them in places they don't know how to straighten. Sarah, he said softly. I nodded. Nothing more. We sat. His lawyer started talking. Numbers. Settlements. Offers. I didn't listen. I watched Daniel's hands shaking under the table. I want one thing, I said finally. They both froze. What? Daniel asked. The truth, I replied. On record. He swallowed. You'll get it, he said quickly. Whatever you want. Just end this. I leaned forward. This doesn't end when you want it to, I said quietly. It ends when it's finished. Then I slid the folder across the table. His face drained of color. Because inside were documents he thought no one had. Documents he had destroyed. Documents with his signature and my name. You can't use those, he whispered. I already did, I said. That was the moment he knew. He had walked into this meeting believing he was negotiating with his ex-wife. But he was actually facing a witness. I stood up. Thank you for coming, I said politely. This meeting is over. And I walked out. 3 hours later, his accounts were frozen. All of them. The first headline appeared at 6:04 a.m. I wasn't looking for it. It found me. I was making coffee when my phone started vibrating nonstop. Messages from numbers I hadn't heard from in years, notifications from news apps, missed calls from unknown contacts. All at once, like the world had finally decided to speak. I set the cup down carefully. My hands were steady. My heart was not. Prominent businessman under investigation for financial misconduct. No name yet. But I knew. By noon, his name was everywhere. Daniel H. CL. Investor. Visionary. Now replaced with words like fraud, evasion, shell companies, international inquiry. The world he built on lies was collapsing, publicly. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and listened to the city outside my window. Life was going on. Cars moved. People laughed. Coffee shops opened. And somewhere across the ocean, Daniel's world was burning. He tried to call. Again and again. I didn't answer. Because the truth doesn't need explanations. That afternoon, my lawyer called. They froze the last account, she said. He's finished. I closed my eyes. Not in relief. In grief. Because no matter what he had done, he was still the man I once loved. But love doesn't cancel consequences. By evening, his partners issued statements. By night, his board removed him. By morning, he was alone. Just like he left me. I went for a walk. For the first time since the investigation began, I allowed myself to breathe. I crossed a bridge and watched the water move underneath me. Steady, unstoppable, patient. Just like truth. A message finally came through. Not a call. A text. You destroyed me. I stared at the screen. Then I typed. No. You did. And I blocked him. That night, I slept without dreaming. And when I woke up, I was free. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after a storm. Not peace. Not relief. Just space. And suddenly, you don't know what to do with all of it. For weeks, I had lived on adrenaline. On strategy. On timing. On survival. Every breath had been calculated. Every word measured. And now it was over. The truth was out. And the world finally knew. Daniel's face filled the screens. Not confident. Not powerful. Small. Broken. Human. I turned the TV off. I didn't need to see it anymore. Journalists called. Old friends reached out. Even family members who hadn't believed me before sent messages that started with, "I'm sorry." I didn't answer most of them. Because this story was never about proving anything to anyone else. It was about getting my life back. I went back to the ocean. The same place I had sat months ago, unsure if I would survive this. Now I sat there, barefoot, watching the waves pull in and out like they had secrets of their own. I let the wind touch my face. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the future. That night, my lawyer sent the final update. "Charges will stick," she wrote. "You're clear. Completely." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because survival had turned into something else. Strength. But freedom comes with a question no one prepares you for. What now? I realized I had built my entire identity around escaping something. And now there was nothing left to run from. So I started building something new. I enrolled in classes. I volunteered. I changed my routine. I changed my name, not legally, but in my mind. I stopped being Daniel's ex-wife and became just Sarah. One evening, as the sun melted into the ocean, I got a message from an unknown number. "I know what you did, and I'm proud of you." No name. No explanation. I smiled and deleted it. Because some chapters don't need closure. They just need to end. Freedom feels strange when you first touch it. It doesn't arrive like fireworks or music. It arrives quietly, like a room you forgot existed, suddenly unlocked. And when I finally had it, I didn't know what to do with it. For weeks, I drifted. Not lost. Not broken. Just unanchored. My days were filled with open space. No plans. No fear. No one watching my moves. And that scared me more than the chaos ever did. Because chaos gives you purpose. Peace demands truth. I started walking longer. Every morning, the same path. Every evening, a different one. I let the city teach me who I was now. I realized I had spent years reacting. Now I had to choose. The message came in an envelope. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. "You could finish him." I sat down slowly. My hands shook. Because the truth was, I could. One more report. One more call. One more push. And Daniel would never recover. I went to the ocean again. I always went there when I needed answers. I closed my eyes and asked myself the hardest question of my life. Who do you want to be? For the first time, the answer was clear. I didn't want to be his ending. I wanted to be my beginning. That night, I burned the last file. Not because it was useless, but because I was done carrying it. The next morning, I sent one final email to my lawyer. "I'm finished," I wrote. She replied with one word. Understood. I packed away the past. And I unpacked myself. Freedom feels strange when you first touch it. It doesn't arrive like fireworks or music. It arrives quietly, like a room you forgot existed, suddenly unlocked. And when I finally had it, I didn't know what to do with it. For weeks, I drifted. Not lost. Not broken. Just unanchored. My days were filled with open space. No plans. No fear. No one watching my moves. And that scared me more than the chaos ever did. Because chaos gives you purpose. Peace demands truth. I started walking longer. Every morning, the same path. Every evening, a different one. I let the city teach me who I was now. I realized I had spent years reacting. Now I had to choose. The message came in an envelope. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. You could finish him. I sat down slowly. My hands shook. Because the truth was, I could. One more report. One more call. One more push. And Daniel would never recover. I went to the ocean again. I always went there when I needed answers. I closed my eyes and asked myself the hardest question of my life.
Who do you want to be?
For the first time, the answer was clear. I didn't want to be his ending. I wanted to be my beginning. That night, I burned the last file. Not because it was useless, but because I was done carrying it. The next morning, I sent one final email to my lawyer. I'm finished, I wrote. She replied with one word. Understood. I packed away the past. And I unpacked myself.